The first thing Ranger notices is not the girl's face, but her hand, because terror, when it cannot speak, always finds somewhere small to hide. Emily Carter stands near the front steps of Maple Hollow Town Hall, 12 years old, pale beneath the soft Vermont sunlight, her blonde hair tucked under the hood of a navy coat that looks one size too large. Around her, the whole town is dressed for remembrance. Small American flags line the walkway. Paper cups of cider steam on folding tables. Children laugh near the fire truck while veterans in pressed jackets adjust medals that catch the afternoon light like tiny pieces of memory. It should feel safe. It should feel ordinary. But Ranger knows ordinary. He has spent 5 years beside Officer Caleb Monroe, crossing school gyms, county fairs, storm drains, wooded trails, and quiet neighborhoods where people smile too quickly when they are afraid. Ranger is a German shepherd, broad-chested, sable-coated, with black along his spine and amber eyes that never waste a glance. He does not bark at balloons. He does not flinch at the brass band warming up near the courthouse lawn. He simply walks beside Caleb with the steady discipline of a dog who understands that the world gives its warnings softly before it breaks. Caleb, 37, tall and square-shouldered, carries himself with the quiet restraint of a former U.S. Marine. His uniform is clean, his boots polished, his voice calm enough to settle a room. But Ranger feels the tension in him too, the old kind buried deep, the kind that comes from remembering someone you could not reach in time. Caleb has brought Ranger here for a K-9 demonstration after the Veterans Day ceremony, a simple community event, nothing more than tracking exercises, a few commands, children clapping when Ranger finds a hidden glove behind a hay bale. Then Emily lifts her hand. Not high. Not enough for anyone to notice. Just 3 fingers close to the seam of her coat, her thumb pressing once into her palm before her hand folds shut again. It lasts less than a second. Her stepmother, Diane Carter, stands beside her with a careful smile, one hand resting lightly on Emily's shoulder, the way adults do when they want the world to see kindness. Diane's coat is cream-colored, her hair neatly pinned, her voice warm as she thanks a neighbor for asking about Emily. The girl does not answer. She only lowers her eyes. Ranger stops. Caleb feels the leash go still and glances down. "Easy, boy," he murmurs. Ranger does not move. His ears tilt forward, his nose catching the air. Cider. Wet leaves. Wool coats. Gasoline from the idling sheriff's cruiser. And beneath it all, sharp and faint, the cold scent of fear. Emily looks at him then. Not at Caleb. Not at the crowd. At Ranger. Her lips part as if a word might escape, but no sound comes. Instead, her fingers tremble once more against the dark fabric of her coat. Tiny. Silent. Almost invisible. Ranger sees it. And something inside the old police dog changes. He lowers his head, locks his amber eyes on the girl's hand, and waits as if the whole town has gone quiet around a prayer no one else can hear. Caleb follows Ranger's stare across the town hall steps, and for a moment he sees only what everyone else sees: a quiet girl in a navy coat, a polished woman beside her, a street full of neighbors pretending November has not already begun to bite. Maple Hollow has always been that kind of place, the kind people describe on postcards, with white church steeples, brick storefronts, maple trees stripped nearly bare by the season, and mountains rising blue and patient beyond the roofs. The Veterans Day ceremony has drawn half the county. Old men in service caps stand near the flagpole with their hands folded in front of them. Mothers hold paper plates of apple pie. A high school band waits in a loose line near the courthouse lawn, instruments flashing brass and silver beneath a pale sun. Somewhere behind the fire station, a generator hums steadily, feeding power to the microphone on the small wooden platform. The air smells of cinnamon, damp leaves, coffee, and wood smoke from the bakery chimney down the block. It is peaceful in every way a town can look peaceful from the outside. That is what troubles Caleb. Peace can be real, but it can also be a curtain. He learned that years ago in the United States Marine Corps, where quiet roads sometimes carried the heaviest warnings and smiling faces could hide desperate things. He does not let the thought show. He only shortens Ranger's leash by a few inches and lowers his voice. What do you have, partner? Ranger's gaze does not leave Emily. The girl stands very still, not with the relaxed stillness of a shy child, but with the careful stillness of someone who has learned that every movement must be measured. Diane Carter gives a small laugh to the woman beside her, a bright, practiced sound that disappears too quickly. Emily has been tired, Diane says, though no one has asked. Poor thing barely slept. Big crowds overwhelm her. Emily blinks once. Her chin dips. Caleb notices how Diane's hand remains on the girl's shoulder, gentle enough for the crowd, firm enough for Ranger to keep watching. A little boy in a red knit hat runs up then, breaking the tension with the innocent courage children carry around dogs. Officer Monroe, is Ranger going to find the glove today? Caleb looks down and manages a smile. That is the plan. The boy beams, then hurries back to his mother. The demonstration area is already set up near the lawn, 3 orange cones, a folded blanket, 2 empty wooden boxes, and 1 hidden leather glove carrying the scent Ranger had been given earlier. Simple work. Familiar work. Work that usually makes people clap. But Ranger does not turn toward the cones. His body remains angled toward Emily, every muscle quiet and ready, as if the real assignment has already changed. Caleb feels a cold thread move through his chest. He has seen Ranger ignore distractions before. He has never seen him ignore a command that has not even been given. The town bell strikes once above them, a low bronze note rolling over Main Street. Everyone begins shifting toward the platform for the opening prayer. Diane leans closer to Emily and whispers something too soft for Caleb to hear. Emily nods without looking up. Then, as the crowd begins to move, her right hand slips from her sleeve. Her thumb presses into her palm again. One small signal. One silent plea. This time, Caleb sees it. Caleb sees the movement so clearly that the noise of Maple Hollow seems to fall away from him for half a breath. The thumb pressing into the palm. The fingers folding over it. The hand disappearing again before anyone can be certain it happened. It is not a wave. It is not a nervous habit. It has shape, purpose, memory. Ranger has already understood that much. The dog stands beside Caleb like a carved shadow, ears forward, tail low, his focus fixed on Emily with a patience that feels almost human. The town pastor steps onto the platform and asks everyone to bow their heads. Hats come off. Conversations fade. The flag above the courthouse shifts in the wind with a soft, dry snap. Caleb lowers his head with the others, but his eyes remain open. Across the gathering, Diane Carter bows gracefully, one hand still resting on Emily. Emily does not bow at first. She looks across the lawn at Ranger, and the distance between them, maybe 30 feet, feels suddenly smaller than a whisper. Caleb takes one step forward. Not enough to alarm anyone. Just enough to let Ranger move with him. Diane notices. Her smile appears before her eyes can hide the worry. She leans down and murmurs something to Emily, and the girl immediately looks at the ground. When the prayer ends, people answer softly and begin to clap as the color guard moves toward the flagpole. Caleb uses the sound to approach. He keeps his face calm, the way he did with frightened witnesses and lost children and veterans who stared too long at empty corners. Ranger walks at his left side, slow and controlled, but every few seconds his nose lifts toward Emily. Diane turns before Caleb can speak. Officer Monroe, she says, bright and smooth. Such a beautiful dog. Emily loves animals, but she is a little overwhelmed today. Caleb gives a polite nod. That happens. Ranger is very good with kids. Emily's eyes flicker up at the sound of the dog's name. Just once. Small, but enough. Caleb crouches slightly so he is closer to her height, leaving space between them, leaving choice in the air. Hi, Emily. I am Caleb. This is Ranger. The German Shepherd does not step forward. He simply sits, calm as a stone in a river, his amber eyes softening in a way Caleb has seen only. Around children and the grieving. Emily swallows. Her lips part. No words come. Diane laughs gently and squeezes the girl's shoulder. She is shy. Her father was the talker in the family. Something in that sentence lands wrong. Not the words themselves, but the way Emily's breath catches when she hears them. Caleb notices the thin silver chain tucked beneath the edge of the girl's coat. A small object hangs from it, half hidden against the fabric. It catches the sun for a second, dull and scratched, not jewelry, not a charm. A broken dog tag. Ranger notices too. His nostrils flare. His head tilts. Emily's hand moves toward the chain, protective and afraid. Diane's fingers tighten just enough to stop her. We should find our seats, Diane says. The ceremony is starting. Caleb straightens slowly. Of course. But Ranger does not rise. For the first time all afternoon, the dog lets out a sound. Not a bark. Not a growl. A low, aching whine that makes Emily's eyes fill with tears she refuses to let fall. The whine is so soft that most people mistake it for wind moving through the bare maple branches above Main Street, but Caleb feels it travel straight through the leash and into his hand. Ranger is not a nervous dog. He is not restless, not uncertain, not given to sounds without reason. When he speaks, even quietly, Caleb listens. Diane Carter looks down at the German Shepherd with a smile that holds too still. Maybe he smells the cookies in Emily's pocket, she says, and a few nearby adults chuckle because they want the moment to be harmless. People often do that. They place a gentle shape over something sharp because it is easier than looking closely. Caleb does not laugh. Emily's fingers close around the broken dog tag beneath her coat, and for the briefest second, Caleb sees the name etched into the dull metal. Daniel Carter. His breath catches, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for Ranger to glance back at him. That name is not unknown to Caleb. It belongs to a man from another lifetime, a Marine with a steady voice, a patient grin, and a habit of tapping twice on his chest before entering any room, as if reminding himself that courage lived there even on the days he could not feel it. Daniel had served with Caleb years earlier, before Maple Hollow, before police work, before Ranger. Daniel had talked about his little girl in the way good fathers do, not loudly, not proudly for attention, but with a softness that changed his whole face. Emily. Caleb remembers the name now with a sudden ache. The pastor begins speaking again from the platform, his voice carrying over the lawn, giving thanks for service, sacrifice, and the families who carry memory forward. Diane shifts her purse to the other arm and guides Emily toward a row of folding chairs near the front. Emily walks because she is told to walk. Her steps are small, measured, almost silent against the brick path. Ranger rises without command. Caleb lets him. Not far. Just enough to follow at a respectful distance. The demonstration can wait. The whole town can wait. Something old and important has opened beneath the ordinary day. Emily sits beside Diane with her hands folded in her lap. The broken dog tag disappears under her sleeve. Ranger settles near Caleb's boot, but his eyes do not leave her. During the pledge, when everyone turns toward the flag, Emily looks back once. Her face is still, but her right hand slips between the chair and her coat. Thumb into palm. Fingers closing. Then a small turn of the wrist. Different this time. More urgent. Caleb sees it. Ranger sees it. The dog's ears sharpen forward, and his body lowers, not in fear, but in readiness. Diane sees the movement too. Her expression changes so quickly that only someone trained to notice quiet danger would catch it. She leans close to Emily, whispering through a smile. Emily's shoulders draw inward. Caleb takes a slow breath and scans the street. Diane's black sport utility vehicle is parked along the curb about 40 feet away, near the old library steps, its rear window tinted, its engine off, its license plate half covered by a maple leaf stuck to the frame. Ranger's nose lifts toward it. The scent is faint across the crowd, buried under coffee, damp wool, and exhaust, but the dog catches something familiar. Paper. Leather. Old metal. The kind of scent that clings to forgotten boxes and keepsakes left too long in the dark. Caleb does not understand it yet. but Ranger does. And when Emily's hand trembles for the third time beneath the edge of her coat, the German Shepherd turns his head toward the black vehicle and goes completely still. For several seconds, nothing happens, and that is what makes the moment feel heavier. The band has begun a slow patriotic hymn near the courthouse lawn. The pastor's voice rolls gently over the crowd. A few children shift in their folding chairs, restless under winter coats, while veterans stare toward the flag with the stillness of men and women who have learned the cost of silence. Caleb stands near the aisle with Ranger at his side, but the leash between them has changed. It no longer feels like a line of control. It feels like a question being pulled toward an answer. Ranger's nose remains lifted toward the black sport utility vehicle by the library steps. His ears are high. His breathing slows. Caleb knows that pattern. The dog is not distracted. He is sorting the world 1 cent at a time, separating coffee from wool, leaves from gasoline, fear from memory. Emily sits 2 rows ahead, shoulders tucked inward, her hands now buried beneath the sleeves of her navy coat. Diane Carter sits beside her with perfect posture, clapping at all the right moments, smiling whenever someone glances their way. But her eyes keep sliding toward Caleb, then toward Ranger, then toward the parked vehicle. That is when Caleb feels the old Marine instinct stir beneath his police uniform. Not panic. Not anger. Just attention sharpened into something clean and cold. The mayor steps up to the microphone and begins thanking local families for preserving the legacy of service in Maple Hollow. Diane rises halfway from her chair, touching Emily's elbow. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispers, her voice soft enough for public kindness. "We should go before the traffic starts." Emily does not move at first. Her eyes find Ranger again. There is no drama in her face now, only a tired kind of hope, so fragile it seems afraid to breathe. Then her hand slips free. Thumb into palm. Fingers close. Wrist turns. The silent signal blooms and vanishes like a match struck in the dark. Ranger moves. Caleb has never seen him move that way in a crowd. Not wild. Not careless. He steps forward with purpose, low and steady, slipping between chairs without brushing a single knee. A woman gasps when the German Shepherd passes her, but Ranger does not look away from Emily. Diane's smile disappears. "Officer, your dog," she says, sharper now. Caleb follows, one hand raised calmly. "Everyone stay seated, please." Ranger reaches the aisle just as Diane tries to guide Emily toward the sidewalk. He places himself between them and the street. He does not bark. He does not bare his teeth. He only stands there, broad and unshakable, his sable coat catching the pale sun, his amber eyes fixed on Diane with a silence that feels louder than any command. The ceremony falters. The mayor stops speaking. The hymn fades in uncertain notes. Emily's breath trembles. Diane laughs once, but there is no warmth in it. "This is ridiculous. We are leaving." She steps to the side. Ranger steps with her. Caleb's voice comes low and even. "Ma'am, please wait." Diane looks at him, then past him, measuring the distance to the black vehicle. That one glance is enough. Ranger turns his head toward the sport utility vehicle and releases 3 sharp barks, each one clear, controlled, and final. The sound rolls across Maple Hollow Town Hall like a bell struck in warning. Emily covers the broken dog tag with both hands. Caleb looks from the girl to the vehicle, then back to Ranger, and in that thin November light he understands one thing with absolute certainty. The dog has not been asking to perform. He has been asking permission to reveal the truth. Caleb does not move quickly. That is the first thing the crowd notices. He does not rush toward Diane. He does not raise his voice. He simply lifts one open hand, the same calm gesture he has used on icy roads, at house calls, and in rooms where fear has already filled every corner. "Mrs. Carter," he says, steady and clear, "please remain where you are." Diane's face tightens around the edges, but she keeps her smile for the people watching. "Officer Monroe, this is embarrassing. Emily has not been well. Your dog is frightening her." Caleb glances at Emily. The girl is not looking at Ranger with fear. She is looking at him the way a person looks at a porch light after walking too long in the dark. Ranger stands between Emily and the street, not touching anyone, not threatening, only holding the space with the quiet authority of a creature that understands the weight of a promise. Sheriff Alan Whitaker steps down from the side of the platform, gray mustache, brown jacket, coffee still in one hand, his expression shifting from ceremony to duty. "Caleb," he says softly. "What is going on?" Caleb keeps his eyes on the black sport utility vehicle parked beside the library steps. Ranger alerted. The sheriff looks at the dog, then at the vehicle. In Maple Hollow, that is enough to change the air. People stop whispering. The mayor lowers the microphone. The flags along the walkway flutter in a wind that suddenly feels colder. Diane gives a small shake of her head. He alerted to what? There is nothing in my car except donation boxes for the church drive. Ranger barks once toward the rear of the vehicle, not loud this time, but exact. Caleb has heard that bark beside missing backpacks, lost hikers, and doors people insisted did not need opening. It is not confusion. It is confirmation. "May I look?" Caleb asks. Diane's answer comes too quickly. "No." The word falls hard, and even she seems to hear how wrong it sounds in a town full of folded hands and remembering hearts. She softens her face at once. "I mean, not without a reason. We are already late." Emily takes one small step forward. Diane reaches toward her, but Caleb speaks before contact can happen. "Emily, you can stand right there by Ranger." The girl freezes. Ranger turns just enough to give her space beside his shoulder. She moves to him slowly, like approaching something holy. When her fingers brush the fur at his neck, the German shepherd lowers his head by 1 inch, accepting the touch without breaking his watch on the vehicle. The sheriff clears his throat. "Diane, if there is a misunderstanding, let us clear it up here." Diane looks around and sees the crowd no longer belongs to her smile. Veterans. Parents. The pastor. The boy in the red knit hat, holding his mother's sleeve. They are not accusing her. That might have been easier. They are simply watching, and honest watching can be heavier than judgment. Diane reaches into her purse with a stiff, careful motion and pulls out a key fob. "Fine," she says. "Open it then. You will see." The sport utility vehicle chirps as the locks release. The sound is small, but Emily flinches as if it belongs to a door she has heard too many times. Caleb notices. Ranger notices. The sheriff walks with Caleb toward the curb while Ranger stays with Emily, his body angled protectively but gently, his tail low, his breathing even. The 40 feet between the lawn and the vehicle seem longer than they should. Caleb can hear the crunch of leaves under his boots, the faint tick of the cooling engine, the distant ring of the church bell moving through the valley. He reaches the rear hatch and pauses. For 1 second, his reflection looks back at him from the tinted glass, police uniform, marine shoulders, tired eyes, and behind him a town holding its breath. Then he opens it. At first, there is nothing shocking. No danger. No chaos. Just cardboard boxes, a folded quilt, a plastic bin of canned goods, and a worn olive-green duffel bag pushed deep into the back. But Ranger's bark changes from across the lawn. 2 short sounds. Caleb knows exactly what they mean. Not the boxes. The bag. He pulls the duffel closer. Dust lifts from the canvas, carrying an old smell that strikes him before memory has time to defend itself. Leather. Paper. Cedar. Metal warmed once by the human body. Caleb unzips it. Inside lies a bundle wrapped in a faded Marine Corps sweatshirt. The name tape is still stitched above the pocket. Carter. Daniel Carter. Caleb's hand stills. The sheriff leans closer, his voice low. "What is it?" Caleb unwraps the bundle with care, as if he is opening something that has waited years to breathe. Letters tied with blue ribbon. A manila envelope marked guardianship and estate documents. A small photo album. A wooden box containing the other half of a broken dog tag. And on top of it all, a Folded note written in a hand Caleb recognizes from field maps, supply lists, and birthday cards Daniel used to mail home whenever they had a quiet hour overseas. Caleb opens the note, and the first line takes the strength from his breath. If Emily ever gives the silent signal, believe her before you believe anyone else. Caleb reads the line once, then again, because some sentences do not enter the heart all at once. They arrive like winter light, slow and pale, revealing what has been standing there the whole time. If Emily ever gives the silent signal, believe her before you believe anyone else. Sheriff Whitaker takes off his hat without realizing it. The paper trembles in Caleb's hand, not from the wind, but from memory. He can see Daniel Carter as clearly as if the man has stepped out from behind the old library wall, tall and broad, laughing under a desert sun, drawing shapes in the dust with 2 fingers while explaining how he taught his daughter a private sign in case she ever felt trapped inside silence. Caleb had thought it was just a father being careful. He had not understood then that love sometimes prepares a child for storms no one wants to imagine. Across the lawn, Emily stands with one hand resting in Ranger's fur. The German shepherd stays beside her, still as a promise, his amber eyes fixed on Caleb. Diane has gone quiet. That is what changes the crowd more than anything. Not the bag. Not the papers. Not even Caleb's face as he holds Daniel's note. It is Diane's silence, sudden and empty, after so much polished speaking. The sheriff looks into the duffel bag and carefully lifts the manila envelope. The seal has been opened before. Inside are legal documents, copies of a will, guardianship instructions, insurance papers, and a handwritten letter addressed to Emily for her 18th birthday. Caleb does not read that one aloud. Some words belong only to the person they were written for. But he sees enough. The house on Birch Road. The savings account Daniel set up through the credit union. The survivor benefits meant for Emily. The instructions naming Daniel's sister in New Hampshire as backup guardian if anything ever felt wrong. Caleb's jaw tightens, but his voice remains calm. Sheriff, these documents need to be secured. Whitaker nods and signals to Deputy Louise Grant, who has been standing near the platform with her radio lowered and her eyes soft but alert. Louise, take custody of the bag. Chain of evidence. Gentle and careful. Diane steps forward then, her cheeks pale beneath her makeup. Those are private family items, she says. Daniel left me in charge. Emily is a child. She does not understand adult matters. Emily's fingers tighten in Ranger's coat. Ranger leans subtly into her hand, not enough to push, only enough to remind her that she is not alone. Caleb turns from the vehicle and walks back toward them with the folded note. He stops several feet away, leaving space because children who have learned fear need room before they can trust safety. Emily, he says softly, did your father teach you that signal? The whole town seems to hold its breath. Emily looks at Diane first, by habit. Then she looks at Ranger. The dog gives one quiet exhale, warm and steady in the cold air. Emily nods. It is the smallest movement, but it carries more truth than all the speeches given that afternoon. Diane reaches for words and finds the crowd already listening past her. She is confused, Diane says. She has always been sensitive. The pastor steps down from the platform, his Bible held close against his chest. Diane, he says gently, let the child answer. There is no anger in his voice. That makes it stronger. Emily swallows. Her voice, when it comes, is barely above a whisper, rough from disuse and fear, but it is there. Dad said if I could not say it out loud, I should show it. Caleb's eyes sting, and he lowers the note slightly. What did he tell you it meant? Emily's gaze drops to the broken dog tag at her chest. She pulls it free with shaking fingers. The metal catches the afternoon sun. Half a name. Half a promise. It means help me, she whispers. The words move through the crowd like a prayer no one was ready to hear. Diane closes her eyes for one brief second, and in that second the careful version of her falls apart. Sheriff Whitaker steps beside her, not rough, not dramatic. Only official and grave. Diane Carter, We are going to continue this conversation at the station. Deputy Grant will accompany Emily to my office until we contact Family Services and Daniel's sister. Diane looks toward Emily then, perhaps expecting pleading, perhaps expecting obedience. But Emily has already lowered herself beside Ranger, both arms around his neck, her face buried in his sable fur. The German shepherd remains perfectly still, accepting the weight of the child as if this too is part of his training, as if he has spent his whole life preparing for a moment when a little girl's silence would finally be heard. Caleb kneels nearby and places Daniel's note carefully on top of the folded sweatshirt. For years, he has carried one failure in his chest, one child he could not reach in time during another call, another town, another winter. But now, beneath the flag and the bare maples and the watchful eyes of neighbors, he understands that grace does not erase the old wound. It gives the hands another chance to do what they were made for. Ranger turns his head and looks at him. Caleb nods once. The dog had known first. Not from words. Not from evidence. From the language beneath language, where fear hides, where love waits, and where a father's last lesson had survived long enough to save his little girl. By the time the ceremony ends, the town does not feel like the same place that had gathered under the pale November sun an hour earlier. The flags still line the walkway. The cider still steams on the folding tables. The band still holds its instruments in gloved hands. But something sacred has shifted beneath the ordinary things, as if Maple Hollow has been reminded that honor is not only spoken into microphones or stitched onto uniforms. Sometimes honor is a dog refusing to move. Sometimes it is a little girl finding the courage to lift her hand. Sheriff Whitaker brings Emily into the quiet warmth of his office beside the town hall, not through the front where everyone can watch, but through the side door that smells faintly of old paper, coffee, and pine cleaner. Deputy Louise Grant walks beside her, carrying Daniel Carter's duffel bag with both hands, careful as if it holds more than evidence. Caleb follows with Ranger at his heel. The German shepherd keeps looking back at Emily, checking, waiting, measuring her breathing the way he has measured trails in snow and footprints along creek beds. Inside the office, someone has left a desk lamp on, and its amber light makes the room feel smaller, gentler. Emily sits in a wooden chair near the radiator. Ranger settles at her feet without being told, his body curved toward her like a living shield. For a long while, no one asks her to explain everything. That is Caleb's first mercy. He knows that some truths have been held in the chest so long that pulling them out too quickly can hurt more than silence. Instead, Deputy Grant brings hot chocolate in a paper cup and sets it on the desk. Emily wraps both hands around it but does not drink. Her broken dog tag rests against her coat, and the matching half lies on the desk beside Daniel's folded note. Two halves of one name. Two pieces of a father who had not vanished as completely as the world had made her believe. Sheriff Whitaker speaks quietly on the phone with Family Services, then with a woman in New Hampshire named Rebecca Hale, Daniel's older sister. When Rebecca hears Emily's name, the sheriff's face softens. He turns slightly away, giving the grief on the other end privacy. Caleb stands by the window, watching dusk gather over Main Street. The mountains beyond town have turned blue-gray, and the first porch lights are beginning to glow. He remembers Daniel in fragments now, boots beside a cot, letters written under red flashlight, a photograph of a blonde toddler taped inside a locker door, Daniel laughing because Emily had mailed him a drawing of a dog with wings. Caleb had forgotten that detail until Ranger found the duffel. Or maybe he had buried it with all the other things service teaches a man to carry quietly. Emily looks up at him. "Did you know my dad?" The room stills. Caleb turns from the window. He does not answer too quickly. Children can tell when adults polish the truth until it becomes useless. "Yes," he says. "I served with him. He talked about you all the time." Emily's eyes lower to the cup. "She said he forgot about me near the end." Caleb feels the words land like cold rain, but he keeps his voice gentle. "No. Your father remembered you in every place I ever saw him." Emily's lip trembles. Ranger lifts his head and nudges her knee once, soft and certain. Caleb walks to the desk and touches the folded note, not opening it again, just resting 2 fingers near Daniel's handwriting. He taught you that signal because he wanted you to be believed, even if your voice could not come out. Emily looks at Ranger. How did he know? Caleb follows her gaze to the dog, to the amber eyes and the quiet strength waiting there. Maybe your dad knew that good people might miss it sometimes, he says. But a good dog would not. Outside, the church bell rings 6 times over Maple Hollow. Emily finally takes one small sip of hot chocolate. It leaves the faintest mark above her lip, and for the first time that day, she almost smiles. Not fully. Not yet. Healing does not arrive like thunder. It comes like lamplight under a door, thin at first, then enough to guide the next step. Ranger lays his head across her shoes, and Emily lets her fingers disappear into his thick sable fur. Caleb watches them in silence, understanding that the miracle was never loud. It had been waiting in the space between a child's hidden hand and a dog's faithful eyes, patient enough to cross years, brave enough to answer without a word. Rebecca Hale arrives just after 7 that evening, driving 3 hours through the dark from New Hampshire with her coat still buttoned wrong and tears already shining before she reaches the sheriff's office door. Emily sees her through the glass first. For a moment, the girl does not move. She has spent too long being careful with hope, too long learning that warm voices can disappear and promises can be folded away like papers in a locked bag. But Rebecca stops in the doorway and places one hand over her heart, the same way Daniel used to do in old photographs, and whispers, "There is my brave girl." Emily stands then. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just one small step, then another, until the distance between them breaks. Rebecca kneels, and Emily walks into her arms with a sound so quiet it barely reaches the room. Ranger rises as if to follow, then stops beside Caleb, watching the reunion with solemn patience. He has done his work. He knows the difference between danger and homecoming. The sheriff lets them have time. Deputy Grant turns toward the filing cabinet and wipes her cheek with the back of her hand. Caleb looks down at the 2 halves of Daniel Carter's dog tag resting together on the desk. For years, the metal had been separated, one piece carried by a frightened child, the other hidden in a duffel bag beneath old papers and dust. Now the name is whole again. Carter. Daniel. United States Marine Corps. It is only metal, only stamped letters, only something that can fit in a palm. But in that room, under the soft desk lamp and the slow breathing of a faithful German shepherd, it feels like a door opening. Later, Caleb walks Emily, Rebecca, and Ranger outside into the cold Vermont night. Maple Hollow has grown quiet. The folding chairs are stacked beside Town Hall. The flags still stir along the walkway, silvered by moonlight. Across Main Street, the black sport utility vehicle is gone, taken for evidence, and with it the shadow that had followed Emily for too long. No one cheers. No one needs to. Some victories are too tender for applause. Emily pauses at the flagpole and looks up. "Did he know I would be okay?" she asks. Caleb follows her gaze to the flag moving gently against the dark sky. He thinks of Daniel's note. He thinks of a father teaching his little girl a signal small enough to hide, strong enough to survive. He thinks of Ranger seeing what a crowd had missed. "I think he believed someone would find you," Caleb says. Emily turns to Ranger and places both arms around his neck. The dog leans into her, warm and steady, his sable coat catching the glow from the courthouse lights. Rebecca closes her hand around Emily's shoulder, but this time the touch does not hold her down. It gathers her in. Caleb steps back, giving them space, and for the first time in many years, the ache inside him feels less like guilt and more like grace. The night smells of pine smoke, frost, and distant chimney. Fires. Somewhere down the street, a church bell gives one soft note, though no one has pulled the rope. Ranger lifts his head toward the sound, then rests it against Emily's chest as if listening for the small, stubborn rhythm of a heart learning safety again. Some prayers are spoken. Some are written in letters never mailed. And some arrive on 4 paws, just in time to hear the silence.